Well, hello again, folks. This is Keith Weber from ISU's GIS Center. We're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar, Globus Beyond File Transfer, presented by Greg Nawrocki of Globus. And just want to let folks know that we will have time for questions, and also this webinar is being recorded and will be made available through our YouTube channel for the GIS Center. And I'll be sending out that link just as soon as possible. So if you are registered for this event or you're participating in this event, then you will get that link. If you're a little bit concerned that you might miss that link, then certainly feel free to email me, and then I will make sure that you get that link. You can email me at giscenter, that's all one word, giscenter@isu.edu. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Greg to teach us all about using Globus large file transfer.
Great, thanks so much, Keith. So so what I'll do is, here's how I generally run these intros, is I'll do a little bit of an intro. I've got some slides that kind of lay the groundwork for what we'll see in the demo, and then I'll jump into a demo, and then jump back into the slides, talk a little bit more about some of the additional aspects of Globus. And, I'm always happy, you can interrupt me at any time. I don't mind that. I'll even pause from time to time at strategic points for questions. I don't mind questions during the presentation. It kind of helps me to focus and plan and steer the presentation in a direction that's suitable for you there at Idaho State. So let's go ahead and get started here. So Globus is we're a not-for-profit service developed and operated by the University of Chicago. Okay, so we're not a commercial venture. People think that we're sometimes a commercial organization. We're not. We're researchers. We wrote Globus for researchers because we've seen some of the big data problems that you see as researchers and scientists that handle big data. So our mission is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of researchers engaged in data-driven science and scholarship through sustainable software. Okay, so the sustainable part is important. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and what we've done to ensure our path to sustainability. So Globus was originally developed and funded by National Science Foundation, DOE, through different organizations with Argonne National Laboratory and the University of Chicago. If you remember way back when, the Globus Toolkit is really where it all started. And that was great. And we used that to really develop the core foundational work that was what now the Globus service and Globus Connect server, the things that you install. But we all know the grant space is a little tenuous, and money comes and goes, and we didn't want money to go away and leave our people hanging with the service that we've developed. We wanted to make sure there's this path to sustainability. So what we chose to do is we put a subscription model in place where various users of Globus can, so the Globus file transfer is free. It's always been free. People can use Globus to transfer files free of charge. We don't mind, no problem. However, if you want to do things like share data, if you want to use the console, if you want to use premium connectors, then you need to be a subscriber. And fortunately, that's paid off pretty well for us because we've got a lot of people all over the world subscribing, and we certainly appreciate that. This helps us. This is our path to sustainability, right? We've been here for 20 odd years. We want to be here 20 plus more. So something that we're always conscious of. So where has that led us? Where are we now? And I can talk about all sorts of neat statistics and various aspects of Globus and what where we are now, but one perhaps the most popular stat lately is this stat that we reached the other day. So Globus has actually been used to transfer an exabyte of data, and that happened just this past week. So very proud of that. Something that we're very conscious of as well. We know that you've our users out there have really put investment in us, so we want to put an investment back in our users. Okay, so that being said, let's get and talk about some of the key capabilities of Globus and what Globus is, how it works, and all the good stuff. So Globus delivers fast and reliable data transfer, sharing and platform services directly from your own storage systems, and I'll talk to all this here, via software as a service using existing identities, all with this overarching goal of unifying access to data across all tiers. Okay, I promise that's the last slide that I'll read verbatim. So what does this mean? So, you know, as researchers and computer scientists, you understand that different file systems have different, they appear differently. Some have web interfaces, some have applications that you need to download to access them, especially some of those object stores or maybe in some of that cloud storage system. We want to make storage look the same to everybody, right? Why should you as a researcher have to worry whether it's cloud storage, whether it's an object store, whether it's standard POSIX store? So Globus abstracts that storage in a way where it looks the same to everybody. Okay, and so when I think of all the goodness Globus brings, I think of the where, the who, the what, and the how. And starting with the where is where's your data stored, right? So what are the various file systems that you've got out there? And Globus pretty much serves just about every popular standard POSIX store, POSIX-based storage, object store, and even some of the popular cloud storage systems out there. Amazon S3, Google Drive, Google Cloud, Box, to name a few. So we are always looking forward. You know, the thing that we're always considering with our roadmap is what cloud storage systems are we adding? And OneDrive is currently being developed. We should have that probably by the end of the year. And then next up will be Azure Blob. And then after that, sometime we'll start working on Dropbox, provided that another version of storage doesn't creep in and people start saying, we need this, we need this. So we're always looking forward to abstract different types of storage. So the who, you know, research isn't done in a vacuum anymore. It's something that, you know, you need to share files not only with your internal folks, but also your collaborators outside. So, you know, Globus gives you that platform to share data out without having to create provision accounts, without having to provision SFTP servers, without having to get all sorts of permission from your IT folks and paperwork and whatnot. Globus provides a really good platform for you to be able to share data with your collaborators. And you'll see this when I demo it. The what here, you know, Globus is thought of as running on large research computing clusters, but we've also developed a sweet spot for getting data off of instrumentation. And a lot of that has to do with these things are huge data providers, right? And they like sequencers. You run a sample and it generates a vast amount of data. And then, you know, the next person's waiting in line to use the thing, and you got to get that data off and up to where you need it to be. You know, not only so the other person can get on the machine, but so you can get that data and actually start doing some work. So we've developed some nice automation tools for getting data from instruments up to where you need it to be. Lastly, the how. When I demo Globus, and some of you are probably familiar with the web interface, when you log into Globus and you start moving files around, we've got a nice web interface, but we also have a command line interface. And that command line interface is great if you have, like, say, headless workstations, or you're just an old curmudgeon like me and like to like the warm glow of your VT100. But it's also a great platform for automation. You know, you can script the command line interface. So if you're a lazy shell scripter, and I say that with great affection, I try and do everything through shell scripts because then it's repeatable, because the command line interface is absolutely great for that. We also, the APIs that the CLI and the web interface consume, we actually expose that API. So like if you're writing your own portal, your own applications, and you want to do things in a Globus-y way, you want to use Globus transfer within your own applications, no problem. We expose that API set. So you can go ahead and use our API set and do things like you would in the web interface, but in your own automated way. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'm going to tie this all together in one slide, and then I'll pause for questions. So when we think of Globus, we think of three things. we think of transfer, we think of sharing, and then building upon those with our platform services. So in this transfer use case, this researcher is going to transfer data from an instrument up to a compute facility. You notice Globus Connect here. So Globus Connect is the software that instantiates an endpoint, instantiates a collection on those compute facilities, either be it an instrument or up on your research computing facility. So she's gonna initiate this transfer. Could have happened automatically. It could have been a cron job in a script. Either way, that transfer starts to happen. And Globus transfers files reliably and securely. Okay, reliably in the sense that we do checksumming. So what you see is what you get. And if what you got doesn't match the checksum of what was sent, it's sent again. And we keep doing that till it happens successfully. Reliably in the sense if that connection goes up and down and glitches, we'll keep trying and we'll pick up where it left off. You know, you don't have to sit there and babysit the connection. We call Globus kind of a fire and forget method, right? So this researcher fires off this transfer, and if it could take days, weeks, months, she doesn't care. She can log out of that web browser, log back in, check on that. Globus does the babysitting of that transfer. Reliably in the sense that it uses Grid FTP. Grid FTP is a very robust transfer protocol, very fast transfer protocol. When it's used in a proper network, it gets roughly 20 times SCP transfer speed. And lastly, securely in the sense that there is encryption to the connection. So you can set encryption on that connection, or even as an endpoint owner, you can force encryption. So you can say any data in or out of my endpoint is going to be encrypted. So great, so she got that data off the instrument, up it goes to the compute facility, she can work on it, do whatever she needs. But let's say she wants to share that data out. So in this sharing case, she's going to select a set of files, and when I do a demo, I'll actually do this and say, okay, I want to share that with a particular Globus user. Globus controls the access to that. What it's going to do, it's going to grant a remote user the ability to come in and act as a local user to do a very specific set of things, and that's read or read-write to a directory, all based on how this researcher has configured that share, and also based on the administrators of the compute facility. They can determine who has the rights to share, what directories they can share from. So there's, you know, a hierarchical level of control here where you know, you can grant certain secure operations based on status or your standing within the research organization. So she has shared this file out to this remote researcher. They're going to log into Globus. They don't need a local account because it's been shared with their Globus account. And again, when I do the demo, this will become a little bit more clear. And they're able to download those files via Globus from the compute facility endpoint to their own endpoint. So the last thing I'll talk about is building upon these. And that's really just using the command line interface, our API sets. Our API set, we wrap in a really nice Python SDK. So if you're a Python programmer, it's really trivial to use our API set. And this really just gives you that platform for building science gateways, portals, publication services, you know, anything you can absolutely dream up. So you automate your workflows, ensure that those that need access to the data have it. And this is all from the comfort of your web browser or using our platform services, accessing just about any type of storage, which we saw, and all using your existing identities. You don't have to get a special Globus account to log into Globus. Okay, so I will pause there momentarily to see if there's any questions, and then I'll carry on. Okay, so carrying on here. Let's talk a little bit about Globus, the security features of Globus. So the first thing is the access control to Globus. You know, we're not an identity provider, right? We don't have to create an account with us. Your identities are generally managed by the institution. Now, I know Idaho State doesn't have an integrated identity provider with Globus, not being in common CI logon member. However, we do have the ability to use Google ID. So if you're a Google user, you can use your Google ID to log in. You can use your ORCID. If you've got an ORCID, you can log in with that. In the kind of the last ditch effort, we do have the concept of Globus IDs, which is our own identity provider, but it's really not part of the pure Globus service. Data remains at your institution. It's not stored by Globus. You know, this is important because data doesn't flow through the Globus service, and I'll show you that in an architectural diagram. So it really remains at your institution. It's when you're sharing data out, you don't have to do that multi-hop transfer where you push it up to cloud storage and then bring it back down. That can get expensive as well as insecure. I mentioned Globus data doesn't flow through that service. It goes directly between the two endpoints, between the two collections. I'll show you that in this architecture diagram. There's integrity checks on your transfer data. I mentioned that. We do the check summing. The high availability of Globus and the redundancy of Globus. You know, we are always up and running. We've rarely ever been down. It's just to do maintenance for a few seconds. So, you know, Globus is very, very highly available, and we do have redundant services within AWS where we operate the Globus service. Also the encryption of files. So when encryption, that's files in flight. We do encryption on that data channel. And again, you can enforce that as an endpoint owner. Now, people often ask me, well, what about encryption at rest? Well, you know, as I showed here, Globus really sits on top of your file system. If you're the manager of that file system, you can certainly encrypt that data at rest. That's not really a Globus thing because that's independent from the way the file system operates. Okay, so let me show you this conceptual architecture here. So when a user logs into that Globus web app, what they're doing is they're connecting to the single globally accessible multi-tenant service that runs in Amazon AWS. So when data is transferred, it transfers directly between the two endpoints, between the two collections. The data doesn't flow through us. But because Globus Connect has been installed on those file systems, because it's abstracting those file systems into a Globus collection, the Globus service communicates with the Globus Connect server, and really effectively is the orchestrator for that transfer, right? So we monitor that transfer, we make sure it's happening. So you can cut this connection here, log in and out of the service to check on that transfer whenever you like. The last kind of conceptual architecture slide I'll show is the sharing use case here. So in the sharing use case, I managed it needs to be under a subscription. And being under a subscription means you have a managed endpoint. So if you are a subscriber, you're allowed to manage endpoints and use some of the advanced features of Globus, in this case, sharing. And so what happens in the sharing use case, if you're sharing with, let's say, this user in an external control domain at a different university, they're going to log into Globus, and because you set their Globus account to be able to do specific things on that endpoint, in this case, they're able just to download that data to their local Globus Connect server, to their local file system. So that's effectively how sharing works. Okay, let's talk a little bit about endpoints, collections, and Globus Connect. So there's two flavors of Globus Connect, and that's Globus Connect Server and Globus Connect Personal. So Globus Connect Server runs on multi-user Linux systems, and you can follow our docs site to find that, and you can download that, and it's freeware. You can download it, install it on your multi-user Linux system. If you have a lab cluster, maybe a Linux instrument, you might want to download it there. Globus Connect Server has performance advantages over Globus Connect Personal. I really won't go into the detail there, but generally you'll get faster transfer out of Globus Connect Server than you will over Globus Connect Personal. But Globus Connect Personal is a perfectly viable option, especially if you're just transferring data off a personal workstation or your laptop. You want to take that data and push it up to your research computing cluster. Globus Connect Personal is an absolutely perfect tool to do that. It can also be used to share data. You can manage that endpoint as well. You can be a member of a Globus Plus group to share data out from your Globus Connect Personal endpoint, but don't expect the performance that you would get as you would out of Globus Connect Server. Okay, so I think I've covered everything there. So I'll pause again for some questions, and we'll jump right into a demo.
Greg, I have a question. Maybe you could clarify this. Now, here at ISU, we have quite a number of partners that are not at universities, and I see a number of our partners are on our webinar right now. And just to make it clear, you've been talking a lot about transferring data from one university to another and so on and so forth, but certainly this can be done with for any of our partners as well, correct?
That is correct. And in this case where you're doing the sharing, only one side of the sharing equation needs to have a managed endpoint, meaning only one side of the sharing equation needs to have a subscription. So you at ISU have your subscription and you're setting shares out so they can be shared by anybody, whether they have a subscription or not. And that's, I think, really important to clarify, especially in your case, sharing the LiDAR data. We often get requests in, I need a Globus account so I can get the LiDAR data. Nope, don't need a Globus account. You can download Globus Connect Personal, you can download Globus Connect Server, you can use it all you want for transfer or to share from a managed endpoint.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. That's how I was sure it worked. I was pretty sure it worked that way, but I wanted everyone on the webinar to know that as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so let's jump right into a demo here. And if you want to, you can follow along and you can actually do a transfer as well, just like I'm doing. So, don't be scared, pull up your browser and follow along if you like. So here it's globus.org, right? That's our website. So let me make that just a little bigger, and it's up here in the login button, and I'm going to click login, and that's going to take me to our login page. So you'll notice there's several ways to log in. Here's if you have an existing organizational login, there's a whole bunch of universities here, including the University of Chicago. I think we have over 1,000 integrated identity providers here. But I know ISU is not a CI logon in common member and does not have their IDP integrated. That's okay. You can still log in with your Google ID. You can log in with your ORCID if you like to, or you can actually go get a Globus ID and sign in with our own little identity provider. But I am a University of Chicago member, so I'm going to say University of Chicago here. I'm going to click continue. You're going to see it jumps out to my UChicago SHIB server. I use Globus all the time, so I was logged in this morning. It only requires me to authenticate once a day. So the University of Chicago has authenticated me and logs me into Globus, and it says, great, okay, so you are who I say you are. And I can check that here. If I look under the account page, I logged in with my UChicago ID. But the neat thing about Globus is it actually allows you to link in other identities. So this is a Google ID, our Globus organization. We're a G Suite organization. This is my Argonne credentials. I'm on the staff at Argonne National Laboratory as well. So I've got my Argonne credentials there, as well as a Globus ID. I actually need that Globus ID because there's some administrative things I do with that. So I've actually made that my primary identity. But you can see I've linked in all my identities here. So now when I come in as one, it carries with it the authority of the others, which is very handy, especially when you're jumping endpoints. So let's go to that file manager page and let's do a transfer here. And here's where you can follow along. If we do Globus, we'll type in the collection here, tutorial, there's tutorial endpoint 1. And let's go to that collection. Oh, I got to click on that. Globus tutorial endpoint 1. And over here, we'll go to Globus tutorial endpoint 2. I'm just going to click on it because I had it up there. And in the share go data directory, there are 3 files. And you'll notice I did this demo earlier, and I have file number 2 sitting here on Globus tutorial endpoint 2. So let's say I want to push up file 1 and 3. I'm going to grab file 1 and 3 and hit start. Oh, wait, I got to deselect that. There we go. So I've got 1 and 3 selected. I hit start and away it goes. So it's going to push those 2 files from Globus tutorial endpoint 1 to Globus tutorial endpoint 2. And you can access those tutorial endpoints and you can play around with transfers all you like. Now, obviously, we don't give you a lot of info or a lot of space here to push data up, so you can fill this up pretty quickly. But if I do a refresh here, you'll notice the files have been pushed up. So there, that's how Globus works. Simple as that. You can drag and drop. I like to use the start button because that's what I'm used to, but there's lots of different ways to do those transfers between your two collections. So that's all great in a demo sense, but what happens when you're a real researcher, right? And you want to use your large-scale computing clusters. At the University of Chicago, our computing cluster is called Midway. And if I search on that, if I search on Midway, I can find here use Chicago RCC Midway. I click on that. And sure enough, this is my root directory. This is my root directory structure on Midway. So this is all something I'm familiar with. If I shelled into Midway, this is what I'd see. It's a great way for me to push data up and back and forth between other collections and my Midway home directory structure. One of the collections I like to use for demos is this ESNet endpoint. So throughout the world, the good folks at ESNet have set up some endpoints with file types of various sizes and various collections. And this is great. So if you're setting up a cluster or a Globus Connect server, even Globus Connect Personal, you want to do some performance testing, you can use these ESNet endpoints to do some performance testing. So what I'm going to do here is just grab this little 1 gig file and transfer that up again. So you'll see, just like I did before, away it goes. And if I refresh there, there's that 1 gig file. You'll see that it gives me some, it says the transfer request was submitted. I can view some details on that request. I can look into the event log here. I can see that the file transfer was started, it progressed and succeeded relatively quickly. If there were faults involved, I could dig into there. I could see there were network faults. I could see if somebody put an endpoint on hold. I can get some overview, effective speed, calculations here. So I can find out a lot about that transfer just by digging into that activity monitor. Okay, so that's great, transferring a little file like that. But let's go grab this bigger 10 gig file. Now, I want to show you some transfer and sync options here. So I can label this transfer. Let's label it Greg's 1 gig XFR. If I'm transferring a group of files, I could sync that group of files where the checksum's different, file doesn't exist on the destination, file size is different. This is if you're doing backups, replication, very simple way to do that. You can delete files on the destination that don't exist on the source, again, for backups and replication. Preserves the source file modification times, who cares when the file was transferred, I want to know when it was last touched. Verify the file integrity after transfer. This is the checksumming, and then there's the encryption of the transfer. Now, if I was on an endpoint that forced encryption, this would be checked and grayed out. I wouldn't be able to unclick it. However, in this case, the ESNet endpoints actually don't allow encryption, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so we've got our transfer labeled. I can start and let that go. I want to show you here the transfer, some of the neat tools here. I call this the lazy man shell tool. So I can actually go here and let's take that 1 gig file. I can delete that file. I could rename it. I could add a new folder. All things when you're doing kind of your disk maintenance. So when you're doing these large scale transfers, you may want to delete some files or move files around. You can do that all from the comfort of this Globus interface as opposed to needing to shell in and do it there. So let's say I started this transfer and it's up and running and I could log out, log back in, and I would just click on this activity monitor. And here's that transfer that was nice and labeled. So if I've got a bunch of different transfers going off, it's great to label them so you know which is which. So if I click on that, again, I can dig in here to the event log. I can see it was started, progressed, and succeeded. So 10 gig in about a minute, pretty good transfer rate. Get that overview just like I showed before. Okay, so we've seen simple transfer. You can do that with directories. We've seen ways to set up those transfer and sync options so you can do multiple files. Let's do a sharing example. So here I've got my slides from today, and I think I stuck them in the slide download directory. There it is, the slide download directory. So if I look at this Globus slides directory, and let's say I want to share that out, I could click on this little sharing icon. And what I want to do is I want to add a guest collection. So I want to add a shared endpoint or a guest collection to this Globus slides directory. And let's call this Greg's ISU slide share. And I can give it a description. I can give it keywords. The nice thing about doing that is if folks are searching on that endpoint, they're able to discover it very quickly, both by searching on the display name, words in the description, and also the keywords. I won't really add that here. I also want to tie this down to a specific directory. So I want to tie this to the slide download directory. So I'm going to select that. So you can see the use case here is you can have different directories under a single share that you can share with various users in different ways. So actually, yeah, we'll just leave it like that. So there we go. We've created that share. And now we're only halfway there because we've actually got to share it with somebody. So we're going to add permissions. I'm going to share with a user that I've created here. I've got this Nawrocki personal account. I am going to share with that Nawrocki personal account. I can send an email. Here are the slides. And I'm only going to give that Nawrocki personal character read permission. Again, I could dig down into another directory if I had a set of subdirectories under here. Here's a use case where you set up a single share, and then with various users, you can share out to different directories there. Okay, but we're going to just share with that, share those slides. I'm going to add the permission, and you see that the Nawrocki personal account now has the ability to read from this share. So let's see if that's true. So let's set this aside, and I'm going to open up another web browser here. So this is a different web browser, and we'll go ahead and log in. We'll log in as that different account. If I use a Globus ID to sign in, it's Nawrocki Personal. I log in, and I've also received an email that's got a link in it. So if I receive that email and just click on that link, it would take me right there. I can search on endpoints shared with me. I could search on that collection name. Let's just look at shared with me. Oh, I got a bunch of stuff shared with me. What did I share today? ISU SlideShare, there we go. So I'm gonna click on the ISU SlideShare. I'm gonna open it in the file manager, and there we go. So now, me as this Nawrocki personal account that has no, in fact, I can prove that here if I go to my account page. It's my Nawrocki personal account, that's my personal email. I have no, as this identity, I really have no ability to log into UChicago Midway. I'm not even a UChicago staff member or employee. However, my UChicago self has shared with my personal self, and now I have the ability to take that file and download it. So where am I going to download it? I mentioned Globus Connect Personal, and I created a Globus Connect Personal endpoint under my personal identity that's running up here. So you can see this Nawrocki Personal MacBook. So if I search on that, Nawrocki Personal MacBook, there we go, I click on that. This is my directory structure on my laptop right here. If I popped open my file manager, you're gonna see this matches here. So I'm gonna grab that file and I am going to download it right to my laptop. And there it goes. So just like before, I've got the transfer details I can dig into. It's gonna be pretty quick here. If I refresh that, yeah, there we go. I think I've succeeded. Yeah, so it transferred very quickly. Let's go back to the file manager here. And now as the administrator, or I'm sorry, as the researcher that did the sharing, I can go in and say, okay, this Nawrocki personal character, He's downloaded everything I need him to download. I'm going to go ahead and delete his access. There we go, removed his access. And if I go back here to my Nawrocki personal self and do a refresh, you notice permission denied. Okay, so we've got a transfer demo that we did sharing, and sharing's all fine and well, sharing with an individual, but there's cases where you may want to share with a group. And luckily in Globus, we've got the concept of Globus Groups. So I've actually created a group here called Greg's Idaho State Sharing Group. And if I click on that, I can see that, let's look at some of the settings of this group. If I edit the policies. So this group, you can join if you are the group is visible to all Globus users. So if you log in right now as a Globus user, you'll be able to see this group. You can search for it. You may request membership if you are a logged in Globus user, so you don't have to be invited. You can just request the membership in this group. And you'll notice that the membership requests are approved automatically if all policies are met. So this is kind of the ad hoc sharing model, right? You can tie it down, obviously. You can tie it down so you have to be invited, or you can request membership and then I have to approve the invitation. As an administrator, I can view the member names, a lot of control that you've got here over groups. The last thing I'll show you in groups is, oh, there we go, let's just set that, is you can set membership fields. So it defaults to username, full name, and email address, and terms and conditions. So if you join my group, you're gonna have to accept my terms and conditions where you promise to wash your hands frequently. We all gotta do our part, right? So here's my little COVID part. So when I do this, I'll look and see if anybody's joined. Look at that, somebody already joined my group. I knew it, thank you. Thanks for playing along here. And so now what am I gonna do with this group? Well, as I mentioned before, sharing was all fine and well with an individual, but we want to do sharing with a group. So where's my ISU slide share? I'm gonna set permissions. I'm gonna share with a group, and I'm gonna click on that group, select the group. There's my groups here, Greg's Idaho slide sharing group. I'm going to set that group, there we go. I'm only gonna give the group read permissions, and there we go, add permissions. So now, if you join that Idaho slide sharing group, you can grab my files and you can transfer them to an endpoint of your choice. The last thing I will show is the concept of roles. And roles exist in both endpoints and in groups. And what roles allows you to do, it allows you to designate a role to another individual. And the use case here is, let's say I am a PI, right? And in my lab, I've set up a Globus endpoint, and I'm going to do some sharing out off of that. But I don't want to maintain it. I want my grad student to maintain it. Or I want, let's say I want my grad students to maintain it and dish out permissions to it. And I want my undergrads to be able to just monitor it and see what's going on. So introduce the concept of roles. I can assign a new role here. And to any Globus user, I can give them administrative rights. I can give them access manager rights, so they can then delegate access to my share. I can give them activity manager rights, so they can see what's going on the endpoint. And also do things like, cancel tasks. If there's a runaway download or something, they'd be able to cancel that. Or just simple monitor, right? Only see what's going on those endpoints. And I'll dive into this briefly when I show you the console. And the same is true with those groups, right? I don't want to maintain, especially a group where I have to delegate access to it, where somebody has to request permission and then I give them access to it. I can delegate a role if somebody has, oh, look at that, everybody's joined here. Oh, no, sorry, that's not that group. Hang on, where's that? Where's my ISU group? There we go, sorry. If I go and find out who the members are. So Jacqueline, I could give her the ability to be an administrator of that group as well. So then she could invite other people, she could approve that. So it's a way for you to kind of delegate access to your endpoint and administrative abilities as well as to your groups. The very last thing I will show is the console. And this is really neat if you're an endpoint administrator, a manager of an endpoint. It gives you a way to see what's going on your endpoints. It gives you kind of this larger global view. And you can see I've been delegated an endpoint monitor role to all these various endpoints. And so I can dig in and see what's going on. So like this nurse endpoint here, those are good, but like something's going on here. Somebody's trying to transfer some data from Nurse Corey to a Google Drive, and there's a problem going on here, and I can dig more into that and see what's going on. Oh, so the file wasn't found. The file they were searching for must have been deleted. So that's what's going on there. I can set up pause rules if I'm an endpoint owner. So if I wanted to do some disk maintenance, I could say, okay, this endpoint I'm the owner of, I'm going to do some disk maintenance, pause all Globus transfers, do the disk maintenance, and then come back. And it's a great way to kind of give that the control over what's going on from Globus standpoint. And then when the users that are using it come in, they'll know that, gee, why is my transfer paused? Or why is this transfer stalled? Well, a pause rule has been put in place, so clearly something okay is going on here. It's not just dying. Okay, so we've seen, let's jump back here, and we've seen transfer, we've seen sharing, we've seen the console. Let's see, we've seen groups. We also have the concept of bookmarks. So endpoints that you don't use frequently enough, you might want to set a bookmark, just like a web bookmark where you can click on that and it'll take you right to that endpoint. I think that's just about everything for the demo. So I will pause for any demo questions here, and then I can jump back to the slides.
Greg, just maybe relatively quickly, could you show folks how to set up or where they would get their personal Globus Connect personal software and so on, how that would be installed, or is that coming up in the next section?
No, let's do that demo here. In fact, that's a great idea. So what we're going to do, so remember I had installed Globus as my personal self, but that's only when I do demos. So I want to revert back to my UChicago self having my Globus endpoint on my laptop. So you'll notice Globus, and so I'm on a Mac, obviously. It's going to look a little bit different on a PC. So this is Globus, where Globus is up and running in the taskbar. And this is important too. I'm going to show you how to delete Globus. So here, if I click on the task manager under preferences, delete Globus Connect personal configuration and exit. I'm going to go ahead and do that, delete and exit. And now Globus Connect personal is not running on my laptop. Now, something that you probably want to do when you do that is actually delete it then from, you'll see I deleted access to it, so it's no longer there. But you may want to delete it from the Globus service too. Just a good way to kind of clean things up here. So let's go ahead and delete that personal endpoint. Okay, so as my UChicago self, I want to install a Globus Connect personal endpoint on my Mac. How do we do that? Okay, so if we go to endpoints, there's create a personal endpoint. I'm going to go ahead, actually, wait real quick. Let me make sure I don't have one named what I like to name it. Administered by me. Good, I was a good citizen and deleted that. So let's go create up here, create a Globus Connect personal endpoint. Download, you can go ahead and download Globus Connect personal for your operating system. I've actually always got it on my machine. We'll pop that up. So there's Globus Connect personal. I'm going to go ahead and run that. Oh, double click. Okay, and it's going to run the Globus Connect personal application. It's going to ask me to log in. Okay, and I'm obviously logged into Globus here. So it's going to say, I'm going to use your Globus identity. Globus Connect personal wants to use your identity to do these things. Sounds good. Greg's MacBook Pro GCP, that's what I like to call it. And we want Globus Connect personal to set up. And we're going to give it a name, Greg's Globus. Oh, sorry, Greg's, what do I call it? MacBook GCP. I give it a description if I want. I'm not going to do that because I don't need anybody to search on this. I hit save. And now Globus should be up and running. And sure enough, if we look up there, Globus is up and running. And if I click on that, there's Greg's MacBook GCP. And now, as my UChicago self, if I go back to my Globus application here, my web app, if I click on Endpoints administered by me, I see Greg's MacBook GCP. I click on that. I can open that up in a file manager. And sure enough, just like I showed you when I had it running previously, there's my directory structure on my local workstation here on my local laptop. So really simple to be able to do a install of Globus Connect Personal. The only thing I will tell you here, the tricks and traps to that, sometimes people try to install multiple copies of Globus Connect Personal. You can't do that. So if you get into trouble, you want to just go ahead and go to Preferences, delete Globus Connect Personal, and reinstall it. A lot of what I'm showing you here, if you go to the docs.globus.org site, we have a nifty how-to page, and you can see how to install Globus Connect Personal for your various operating systems and the firewall policy that you need in place for the installation of Globus Connect Personal. Did that do it, Keith?
Yep. Hey, I think I recall a number of questions that we've seen is a person installs Globus Connect Personal, but unless this has changed, I believe a person still has to make some settings that a certain folder on their actual computer where they're going to copy files down to has to be made readable, writable by the Globus service. Is that still done through the Globus Connect Personal endpoint options?
Yeah, so if we go there and if we go to Preferences, I can actually, you saw when I installed that, I installed it just kind of as my general directory structure. But if we go here to Access, you can pick files and directories where you're able to write data into. And here, I've just got it set to my general directory structure, but that's not always a good idea. So sometimes I will put, let's see, I think I've got where did I do that? I've got a Globus, Globus Endpoint, there. I've got a directory that I call Globus Endpoint, and I'm going to now make that writable so I can download files into my Globus Endpoint directory, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove this one because I don't want to send files to my root directory. So now that Globus Endpoint directory is the source of downloads to my Globus Connect Personal.
Very good, thank you. And that, I mean, if a person has permissions correct on their own computer, that location could be a mapped drive to a server or network drive, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's visible from a mounted standpoint, certainly USB drives work as well. So you're able to, if you can see it as a mount point, you'll be able to see it on your file accessibility here.
Excellent. So I don't know if anyone else has other questions. I'm kind of dominating questions here, but if you have questions, folks, just feel free to unmute yourself and get your questions asked.
Okay, well, I can also carry on as well, and certainly I can save time at the end for some additional questions. But why don't we just jump back in here? Oh, I mentioned the Globus command line interface. Really, really slick. As I mentioned, if you're a command line guy like me, or if you want to do automation, we've got a ton of information on the command line interface. We've actually got automation examples where we show how it's used for data automation. Lots of different things. We got great in our doc site, great documentation on it. It's actually open source. So if you want to go and poke around and see how the command line interfaces uses the API set, go right ahead and do that. I mentioned the Globus platform using our API set. So not only do we expose our transfer API, so if you like the way I did things in the web browser and you've got your own application and you want to do file transfer with Globus using your own application, we certainly have the ability to use our transfer API as well as our auth API. So if you like the way Globus is authenticating, if you want to use the Globus account system, we actually expose our auth API as well. So that's available to you. With our transfer API, we've got a ton of documentation out there. We've got Jupyter notebooks. We've got automation examples using our Python SDK. So a lot of good resources out there if you're interested in using our transfer API in the wild. And speaking of the transfer API in the wild, are there people using our API to do things? And yeah, absolutely. So we've got people out there that are using it in their own data portals. And the one that you hear about a lot is this NCAR Research Data Archive. And they kind of kicked the whole thing off because they said to us, well, we've got these massive weather data sets, and people are coming to us and saying, well, this is great if I download it with HTTPS, but number one, it takes forever. Number two, that if that connection glitches, game over. I want to be able to do things with Globus. So we started exposing our API, and now you can see you can not only get files, download data files over the web using HTTPS, but also with Grid FTP and using the Globus transfer service, all with just a click from this data portal. And speaking with Keith earlier and what he's doing with the LiDAR data, I expect we may see Idaho State eclipse what NCAR is doing if all that data that he's putting on his portal is going to be available. So the last thing I'll talk about is where do you go when you get stuck? Well, docs.globus.org is a great place to start. You're going to find just a ton of documentation there. If you have a question, don't be afraid to use support@globus.org. We've got a great set of support folks that are always willing to help you get your Globus problems taken care of. We've got mailing lists out there that are also good if you want to communicate with other Globus users. The customer engagement team, that's growing. It's me and a couple other folks. We're happy to do things like this, where we do webinars, lunch and learns, whatnot. We also have a Globus professional services team. So let's say you're building your own portal and maybe you've got money but not time. We can certainly build that for you. They also have some tools in their toolbox that they're also willing to share. So we've got some Django framework to make portals as well, and the PS team is always willing to share that out. Lastly, bringing Globus to your campus. I know it's easy to say that during this time of COVID, but we used to do in-person visits. We're always happy to do that. I'm always happy to do these webinars, can jump on a Zoom session very easily, but we'd also do what we call the Globus World Tour, where we take the show on the road. We'd come in, we'd do these demos live. We would do everything from admin tutorials, where you're doing installations of Globus Connect server on a AWS instance that we spin up for you. We do down and dirty coding with the Jupyter notebooks and our Python SDK. So we've got just a ton of content that we can offer. So as you get more and more involved in Globus and are using Globus, we are certainly happy to help you out with that. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have. I can certainly hang on for additional questions or jump back into the demos, whatever you need.
One last thing I wanted to bring up, and maybe you can elaborate on that, Greg, is, I've been using Globus for quite a number of years. Started in the days when all that we had was Globus IDs to get connected and all that. And I like to watch my transfers. I got a lot of big transfers, so I have the luxury of watching them for a while. We're on a 1 gig per second connection, and I kind of see it pretty darn close to saturating my pipes, which is great because the transfer gets done with quickly. Is that kind of what we should expect across the board? Is there other application? I mean, this is, in my experience, is just faster than anything else that I've seen.
Yeah, no, that's like I said, on a well-configured network, you're going to see that saturation. Now, one thing I will point out, and you're going to see that with a managed endpoint. And so this is kind of where the performance between Globus Connect Personal and Globus Connect Server comes in. On Globus Connect Server, and let's see if I can find an endpoint. Let's look for, is Blue Water still up? I think it is. If NCSA Blue Waters, if I look on that endpoint, oh, sorry, I wanted to search on the endpoint. There we go, NCSA Blue Waters endpoint. I can take a look at the servers here, and I can see they've got, so their endpoints are actually 25 physical servers, and we have some network use parameters that can be set. Now, obviously, I can't set them, but you'll see they've set their concurrency very, very high. So there's a couple of knobs that you can tweak here. One is this network use parameter. We've kind of got a high, medium, and low setting. And you can tweak that to take advantage of your network. But then you can also go into custom, where you actually control the concurrency, so the number of files in flight, and the parallelism, the number of parallel TCP streams that are going with grid FTP. So you've got a lot you can tweak here, a lot of leverage you can pull to maximize that efficiency.
I think one of your previous transfers, that 10 gig transfer that you did, when you pulled up the performance when it was all done, if I remember right, it ran at about, yeah, you called it that one right there. Yeah, 204 megabytes per second. So what are you on? Are you on a 10 gig connection?
Yeah, that's a 10 gig connection, and that's between the University of Chicago. So, here I am at home, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm using our research computing cluster at Midway, downtown at the University of Chicago. The endpoint that I sourced data from was in Switzerland at CERN. Uh-huh. And here I'm getting that effective speed over that link. But the cool thing is, I'm able to do this all from home.
Yep. Yeah, so we're on a 1 gig here, the connections I normally use, and the most I can really expect is 125 megabytes per second. That's the equivalent of, that would be absolutely saturating it. And I've gotten to 100, 104, 105 as my effective speed.
Yeah, nice.
Well, folks, it brings us right up to lunchtime. I don't know if there's other questions. Greg has already given quite a number of ways to contact Globus for additional help. I hope you have enjoyed the webinar, and thank you very much, Greg, for doing this for the folks at Idaho State University, our partners throughout Idaho. I think that probably wraps things up very nicely. Thanks again, Greg.